Hey, Kelly. Well, let's start here with nat gas because there are some eye-popping moves. The U.S. contract surged more than 11% earlier in the day to $9.75, which was the highest since July 2008. It has since pulled way back from that level, but is holding right around the $9 level. Now, this August contract rolls tomorrow, meaning some of the activity is due to thin trading volume around expiration. But on the fundamental side, we do have hot temperatures and little production growth. And nat gas now on track for its best month ever. And if you thought our prices were elevated, take a look at Europe. Nat gas there surging nearly 20% today, crossing above the 200 euro per megawatt hour mark for the first time since March. At 211, that's equivalent to about $63 on Henry Hub, according to Argus Media. The EU today agreeing to voluntarily cut gas usage by 15% between August and next March. And those cuts would become mandatory in the event that an emergency is declared. This deal, of course, comes one day before Russia is set to further cut gas deliveries via Nord Stream 1. Beginning tomorrow, Kelly, it will be operating at just 20% capacity.
And they're paying 6 times what we are paying for natural gas, and we know already more for gasoline as well. Amazing. Pippa, thank you.
Welcome to War Room Battleground, Tuesday, 26 July, year of our Lord 2022. Headline in this morning's Financial Times of London: fears of Europe's gas crunch mount as Russians cut Nord Stream 1 flows. We've invited in Rebekah. Koffler is going to join us in a moment, but I got to start. I got Mike Davis going to talk about the laptop from hell and what's going on in this tech bill. It's kind of like the 27 Yankees. We got Murderers Row, but I got to start with my leadoff batter. Dave Walsh, you've done such a great job of really becoming kind of the tutor and the mentor to the MAGA movement about energy. But, brother, I got to put it in perspective today. I think when Trump was in office, and Dave Walsh, correct me, I remember, I think the natural gas was around $1.50, $1.75. I know it got over $2, and I think it was $2 a while ago. But it's $9.34 today. It's been banging around, got up to $9.75. What's the price of the exact amount? Just staying on that comparison in Europe as we mark to market today. What's the price of natural gas, sir?
Europe equivalent to the U.S. per MMBTU, $63. We hit about 3 hours ago, we're $8.93. We did spike up to $9.45 today. During the most of the Trump administration, we averaged about $2.25 to $2.30 per MMBTU. One fourth of these levels is where we were. We talked, you and I, about the Freeport LNG terminal fire a few weeks ago. When that hit, prices dropped one day to $5.50. We've gone up 62.3% since then, as exportation has kicked in very high gear to Western Europe.
Yeah, but hang on. I want to put a pin in that, because I don't think, and I talked to Cortez when I booked you, I said, look, I don't think we're describing to the American people, when we talk about the Germans talking about they think they're going to have social unrest when the Italian government just fell because of this. What we're paying. We used to pay average, let's say $2 or somewhere just north of $2 under Trump,
$2.20
when we had full spectrum energy dominance. Around $2 under Trump and full spectrum energy dominance.
Right.
At today, it got up under Biden north of $9, almost $10. Okay, now I understand back up over $9. The equivalent in Europe is $63. Am I correct in that? I just want to make sure that we're comparing to an American audience.
Apples to apples.
Okay.
Yes.
You're going to have, first off, we've made the Biden, NATO, Davos, the EU have made the oligarchs in Russia and Putin and the collection of thugs and criminals around him the richest Saudi princes. You're going to have a revolution in Europe. $63, besides paying for either heat or air conditioning and some food, they're not going to have any discretionary income to do anything. Dave Walsh, am I wrong in this, sir?
No, you're exactly right. And to point specifically, Germany, who bragged about the wind energy, solar energy for electricity, have remained 95% dependent on gas and oil for home and building heating. So this is a complete disaster in Germany. Plus the manufacturing base there is, of course, heavily dependent on natural gas feedstock for all kinds of products, from petrochemicals to plastics the car making, everything. But here's a continent that also, in the last 15 years, has methodically and programmatically reduced its own production of oil and gas coming out of the North Sea, Norway, Sweden, the UK, Scotland, reducing production from what was close to 10 million barrels a day down now pre-Ukraine invasion to 3.5 million barrels a day coming out of the North Sea on a conscious basis to become dependent on Russia. They haven't reduced consumption really at all meaningfully in Western Europe. It's been a matter of becoming totally dependent on imports from Russia as opposed to their own production. And, heaven forbid this administration wants the same thing to happen in this country. Reduce production from where we were at 13 million barrels a day 2 years ago, down now 2 million barrels a day, and to lower levels yet if most of their policies are enforced.
Hang on one second. I want to go back to Europe because this is all inextricably linked. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're our mentor. You're our guide. There's a direct correlation between price of natural gas and the price of food. Is it not correct, sir?
Yes, sir. Three-quarters of the key fertilizers in the world are derived from natural gas. That's one issue. Secondly, the transportation of everything in the cold chain, from vegetables to fruits to meats, the transportation and cooling of those items to keep them refrigerated to be able to safely consume them, I'm speaking in very plain terms, that's what we're talking about, is probably now 60% transportation and cold chain cost inside of typical food items, not to mention what's happened to fertilizer costs that have quintupled since mid last year, which is a huge input, and we're going to have a huge problem in the fall harvest.
Dave, hang on one second. I'm going to bring in Rebekah Koffler in a second, but I want to ask you this. If people consciously put together a plan of how to destroy a civilization based upon energy, they would go to the transition to these sustainable energies that are not ready yet, dramatically cut production, hold it, then make yourself totally dependent upon a dictatorship that has its own strategic plan. Make yourself almost 100% that, and then challenge that. Is there anything I'm missing that? And by the way, it's $63. People understand this. What we're paying $9 for, and is breaking the backs of American consumers. This is why 42% of people can't sleep at night, because they're sitting there going, how am I going to pay this? I can't even make my day-to-day bills. This is why Walmart just missed their numbers. Walmart missed their numbers for one reason. The consumers have enough to pay for energy costs and transportation energy costs, and the little bit of food they're getting at Walmart, they come out is because I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but how possibly did Davos and Brussels and NATO and the EU and all these geniuses with the German governments are so smart, all of our betters, how did they actually set up a perfect storm that will literally destroy their economies, and with their economies, their people?
No, you're exactly right. And you go right back again, simple things. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People will buy food first, the energy to get the food and refrigerate the food and to make the food second, to cool and heat themselves third, before they get to, excuse my plain speaking, buying junk at a store. And because of that, you're seeing now a significant recessionary signs occurring. The use of gas in this country is now down 8% from a year ago, same date. The use of gas for cars. I'm going to tell you how bad that is. In a harbinger of the recession we're into now, in the 2008 recession depression, which was severe, gas use declined about 4% year on year, 08 to 09. In the 2020 catastrophic collapse we had for about 3 months, it dropped about 13%. So 4% in 2008 to 2009, 13% last year, 2020, in that 4-month, 5-month bad period. We're already down 8% in utilization of gasoline in the last few months. So, yeah, there's been some price relief here of about 10, 12% in the last few weeks because of severe demand suppression of gas use for cars over here, which is indicative of we're into a significant recession caused by energy costs in everything, in food, in gasoline, in home heating oil. We're going to get into cooling in the summer right now with gas across 40, 60% of the country now dependent on gas-fired power generation. And the narrative on all this. The Wall Street yesterday came out with an article spinning the grid stability, how summer weather constrained the grid. It's not summer weather. What's happened to us is the fact that we've reduced baseload continuous duty energy sources already by about 9% from 2015. And if you believe all the consensus forecasts of new generation capacity to be added by 2030, reserve margins in this country will be about halved from where they were in 2015, meaning the opportunity for grid disturbances, brownouts, and blackouts will more than triple by 2030, not because of grid instability, but because of the lack of continuous baseload power generation plants, coal, natural gas, and nuclear. Stuff that produces power all of the time is now the mix of that has drastically reduced in favor of wind and solar new capacity additions, causing much more exposure to brownouts and blackouts as reserve margins of electric power reduce and reduce and reduce. Now, we're headed into that third world category, consciously and intentionally.
Unbelievable. Hang on for 1 second. In a world energy crisis, but the United States is heading into a third world. I want to bring in Rebekah Koffler. Dave Walsh, you hang right there. Rebekah, you're former DIA officer. You're considered one of the world's experts on understanding Putin and the Tsar's court around him and their thinking. Could they've ever envisioned in a million years that the geniuses in Brussels and EU and in Germany and would have had a plan set up that they're now, I think they're generating $900 million of free cash flow a day, ma'am?
They could have never predicted it, Steve. What happened was even Putin pre-calculated the impact of the potential sanctions. He sanction-proofed his economy. He could have never expected that the Washington geniuses were going to bite the nose to spite the face. The sanctions are now backfiring at us. The International Monetary Fund released a new outlook and predicting that the global economy is in a recession. But guess whose economy is not in a recession? The numbers for the Russian economy are actually up. The geniuses are completely incompetent in Washington, and they need to get out. We need to install real people who understand warfare, who understand strategy and the economy. Because guess who's advising Putin? He has an MIT-educated central banker, Elvira Nabiulina. He added another econ PhD to his team. And I don't know who these people are, that are running the White House, because it's certainly not Biden and the Jake Sullivans and the Anthony Blinkens. These are the Obama 2.0 crew that screwed things up the first time, not only in Afghanistan, but with Russia, right? They wanted a reset. They wanted to be friends with Putin. It's a mess.
Let me say, the Financial Times of London fears of Europe's gas crunch mount as Russia cuts Nord Stream 1 flows. Rebekah, my question is, Zelensky came out today and accused Russia of being a terrorist state because he says they're using gas as a weapon. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it was the United States that went after to take down the central bank of Russia, to crush the ruble, to cause a revolution in the streets. What does Zelensky mean when he says, of course they're going to use their natural resources? What does Zelensky mean when he called Putin and the Russians economic terrorists, ma'am?
It's very difficult to understand what Zelensky means, Steve. Zelensky is a highly trained, skilled, and talented actor. He knows exactly what buttons to push with Americans and with the Europeans. So he's throwing out phrases like, Putin is a war criminal, Russia is a terrorist state. This is all intended to evoke emotions because he knows how we react, right? So what's been happening is Ukraine is losing the war. And Zelensky is looking for scapegoats to blame somebody. And so all this rhetoric is not going to translate in any kind of progress and victory, because the way that he identified victory is to retake the entire portion that the Russians have occupied, which is one fifth, right? And that is just implausible. And so what's happening, President Biden has opened the spigot. It's U.S. taxpayers' money that are flowing into the coffers of not only Putin's oligarchs, but Ukrainian oligarchs and the U.S. military-industrial complex. Guess whose stocks are up during this war? The Northrop Grummers and the Raytheons. And it's the American people that are funding this war. And Biden and his conglomerate, the corrupt conglomerate, are telling the American people that we're going to provide support to Ukraine for as long as it takes, I quote. Really? We have already spent in 5 months more than in 5 years in Afghanistan. It's outrageous. $8 billion during the Biden administration, plus additional $54 billion that Congress has, $62 billion, and it's keep ratcheting it up. They're going to devastate and bankrupt our own country.
Rebekah, your book is out there. We're going to have you back on later when we get a better connection. Your book is out in paperback, Putin's Playbook. People can get it on Amazon. It's from Regnery. It's the paperback edition. I strongly recommend everybody get this book. You get inside the thinking of the KGB, the FSB, the court around Putin, but particularly his plan to take down America. And I got to tell you, this is a very well thought through thing. And the thing that scares me is the Western Europe and NATO and the Biden administration is playing right into their hands. I just want to leave you with one quote. Joni Ernst today over at the maybe yesterday at the America First Policy Institute conference said her objective and the objective of other hawks like her are to literally decimate the Russian media, Russian army, the Russian military, and drive them out of Ukraine back into Russia, which would obviously lead to American combat troops would have to be there. What's your social media handles, Rebekah, and how do people get the book, Putin's Playbook?
The book is available anywhere on Amazon and pretty much in any store. Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. I predicted this war, and the new introduction includes the information on the crisis in Ukraine. It also includes information of what the DIA and the CIA were trying to hide from the American people by censoring my book, which they actually did try to kill. So you're going to learn a lot. My social media handle is at Rebekah0132. Thank you for having me, Steve. You speak the truth, unlike so many channels here that are basically cheering. They have become PR agents for Zelensky, and they're deceiving the American people about how they brought us into this war that potential has a very, very serious potential to escalate in a major war in Europe and even in a war between the United States and Russia. Because not only we're supplying weaponry, we are now considering supplying F-15s and F-16s. So Putin, they think these geniuses, Putin is just going to sit and wait. You know, he's going to try to accomplish as much as he can and unleash, you know, he's already unleashing bombardment across the entire Ukraine. You know, he just struck Odessa. This whole grain, you know, export deal was just a deception by Putin. And these geniuses, they are tricked every single time.
Rebekah, thank you so much. By the way, Rebekah Koffler has joined us from the lobby of the famous Trump Tower. You see right there in the background. Rebekah Koffler wouldn't happen to be positioning herself to be national security advisor in the second Trump administration. It's Rebekah Koffler. Thank you. Thank you so much. Live from Rebekah's live from Trump.
Steve,
Trump,
I'm going to have
Tower.
some Trump champagne to celebrate my book.
You deserve it. It's out in paperback today from Regnery everywhere. Everybody got to get it. We're going to have her back on. We get her in studio to go through this. I want to go back to Dave Walsh. Dave, are we inadvertent? By the way, the $63 is not an apples to apples comparison because the contracts are done differently. But let's say this, they're paying out of 6 or 7 times what 5 times what Americans are paying. It's an enormous difference. And this is why these governments, Orban called it in Hungary, they're going to start to fall like dominoes. Are we on the precipice, Dave Walsh? You say the United States is heading to be a third world country as far as energy production goes, where we should be full spectrum energy dominance like we're in a Trump. Do you believe right now, sir, that we are on the precipice of causing a global energy crisis that'll be very tough to unwind, sir? Are we looking into the abyss?
We have a global energy crisis, and I'm going to say Zelensky's commentary is so disingenuous. You're a student of the Second World War. Modern warfare for the last 100 years has been totally dependent on oil and gas. The Japanese invasion of Pearl Harbor was about the United States oil and gas boycott after they had taken 2/3 of Southeast Asia. The U.S. boycotted oil and gas. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor as a direct result. The Germans negotiated in 1939 a treaty with Russia to augment their 3-day supply of oil and gas. Germany, to get the war machine moving into Poland, Yugoslavia, Hungary, with Russian gas and oil that they contracted for about 2 years, happily being delivered to them. When the Russians ceased that agreement was about the time that Germany decided to invade, to go and get those oil fields, because they're essentially important to the conduct of any conflict. It's not about terrorism. It's about the modern age warfare is dependent on the supply of oil and gas. This is through history. No, these kinds of prices are hideous. And again, I go back to the German case of home heating is a big deal. And factory capacity, the car industry, the chemical industry, the steel industry in Germany, the machine tool industry, all based on energy, oil and gas at the heart of it. This issue of having no supply with the pipeline shut down for maintenance that are probably a lot of concern not going to be reopened. Again, 95% of building heating is still oil and gas, despite all these media proclamations about Germany being green and wind and solar. Wind and solar have nothing to do with most of the energy consumed in Germany, frankly, when you take into account heating, cooling, and transportation, all in.
Unbelievable. Dave Walsh, how do people get to you? I know you're up on Getter, putting up great material all the time. How do people get to you, sir?
I'm on Getter at Dave Walsh Energy on Getter. Thank you, Steve.
Unbelievable. Dave, you've done such a good job of being a mentor to the MAGA movement to understand this. I think our show does a better job of giving the average American a real snapshot of what's going on in the world, because right now this is an energy crisis. It's going to drive a famine. It's also going to drive misery, and governments are going to fall. You see it. The Italian government's falling exactly because of this issue. This is why Draghi's gone, and this is why Giorgia Meloni's going to be there. Yes, sir.
In the country, only you really providing the forum to do this. Only you. This is really important. Thank you, Steve.
I appreciate it, brother. Dave Walsh. Let's go. More blockbuster news today, and I had to bring the one and over Mike Davis. Mike Davis is very focused on this tech bill that they're trying to get forced to break the tech oligarchs. Mike, I've had you do other duty, given Grassley. Blockbuster story overnight from CBS News, Catherine Herridge. The whistleblowers, official real whistleblowers from the FBI and DOJ have come to Grassley. He's met them. He's interviewed them. He's looked them in the eye. He sent a letter now to DOJ about the laptop from Hunter Biden's. Walk us through what is going on, and I'm going to take you we got a couple minutes to lay the case out, then I'll bring you back and talk about Grassley as a man and how serious he is. What did CBS tell us last night and this morning, sir?
So what happened is Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa is the top Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he has been a longtime champion for federal whistleblowers, people who want to expose waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. And he has been investigating serious corruption at the FBI, where whistleblowers from the FBI have come to him with very credible evidence, according to his letter and according to Catherine Heritage's reporting, that the FBI, not only did the FBI try to influence the election on Trump to make sure he wasn't elected and then not reelected, they also they coddled Hunter Biden. There was an active investigation into Hunter Biden's corruption. James Biden, President Biden's brother, Hunter the son, and maybe even President Biden himself. There was corruption with their foreign dealings with Ukraine and China and elsewhere, tax evasion, failure to report these foreign dealings, other potential crimes. The FBI had serious leads on this, and there were senior officials in the FBI and the Washington field office who shut down this investigation, number one. Number two, they actually set up this hoax. They had a supervisory intel agent at the FBI say that this derogatory information about Hunter James and maybe President Biden was part of a misinformation or a disinformation campaign from a foreign government, and that's how they were able to shut down this criminal investigation. This is as bad as it gets for corruption inside of the FBI, and my former boss Chuck Grassley is trying to get to the bottom of it.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return with Article 3, our man at Article 3, as he goes through Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley is Mike Davis knows him. Chuck Grassley is a rock of Gibraltar. He's not a lawyer, but he heads up judiciary. You know why? Because he's Iowa fair and Iowa tough. But what's happened, these revelations come out in the last couple of days are nothing short of stunning, that the FBI that had the laptop from hell in December of 2019 not only didn't do anything with it, actually suppressed the investigation forward and then actively spun the tale about it being a disinformation campaign. They had the 35 or 40 intelligence officers send that letter to the New York Times. Okay, short commercial break. Mike Davis, Article 3, next in the War Room.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back. I got Mike Davis from Article 3. He knows Chuck Grassley, worked for Chuck Grassley, was a clerk for Gorsuch, all of it. I got two things I want to talk to him briefly, too. The takedown of the Ministry of State. He's committed to do an hour on these Axios memos. Also, his campaign to take down the tech oligarchs. Mike, I got to tell you, because, look, on War Room, we're the guys that work with the New York Post to get it up in print at the Murdoch newspaper, and we broke it. And when the New York Post went up that morning, we're the guys that the first people in media to kind of put it up, and we're relentless on this thing, to the fact that they took us down on Twitter and everything else. But this is what my strong belief had to be, that something like this went on. It's different when you see CBS News report it, which you have real whistleblowers at a senior level have come to Grassley. They've been interviewed, and Grassley's now sent a letter. This is about as serious as you can get. And I think what's shocking is people are going to come to the conclusion that the Darren Beatties of the world and the Raheem Kassams of the world and the Steve Bannons of the world, we've been saying for a long time, we need another like church committee or church commission, that the FBI and the CIA are so out of control and so off their original mission that we need to collectively come together and review all of this. Where do you think, you know Grassley better than anybody, you know how determined he is. Where do you think Grassley's investigation is going to go in this, sir?
Well, I think it's going to expose corruption at every level. That there's corruption at the Department of Justice, including at the FBI. There was corruption in the Obama White House when they unleashed the Russian collusion probe on incoming President Donald Trump, when they spied on his presidential campaign, when they even used an intel contractor to spy on President Trump when he was the president of the United States. And then when there's this investigation into Hunter Biden, who's the bagman for James and probably President Biden, if you look at the communications, if you look at the emails, President Biden knows full well what his son and brother James are doing. And when there's derogatory information that's coming in to the FBI is trying to investigate this, and then the senior leaders of the FBI cook up this fake intelligence that this derogatory information is from a foreign disinformation campaign to shut down this investigation into the Biden family. This is as corrupt as you're going to get. And Chuck Grassley, my former boss, he's determined. He works like a dog, and he's dogged. He'll get to the bottom of this.
It's absolutely shocking, but everything we said has come true, and this is going to be massive. The FBI now has been exposed by whistleblowers. Chuck Grassley, the Judiciary Committee's on it. Remember, we flipped up the Senate. He takes charge. There'll be hearings immediately. This is a blockbuster. Real quickly, two things. Number one, you've committed. I've got you committed now on national TV that you're committed. You're going to do an hour. The reason is that Mike Davis, as you know, we spent 2 hours in a special a month ago, and people are still raving about it, talked about the legal aspect of the deconstruction of the administrative state, with really Gorsuch as the intellectual leader, I would say, of that on the court. And this is why I said, and I'm not a Supreme Court guy, but I have mentors like Mike Davis, I said in the last session, as important as Roe v. Wade is, the one that will be remembered historically was the EPA versus West Virginia, because that begins, I think, this process of deconstructing the administrative state. In addition, Axios has reported this amazing program that's put together with all these different groups to really have the 4,000 political appointees be ready to hit the beach day one, what they call landing teams, beachhead teams, to get into the government and start the actual process of deconstructing the administrative state. And Mike, you've committed to come on, and we're going to take an hour or so, maybe a 2-hour special, walk through that memo and see how they converge also with the legal. I do have to ask you, if you're in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and remember, we have, I think, 5 of the 7 richest counties in the country because of the imperial cities here and so many of the federal employees from the administrative state, you are constantly, if you watch MSNBC and CNN, which we do nonstop, we have teams that monitor them. If you think the big pharma ads used to be big, it's nothing compared to what they're doing to stop Mike Davis in Article 3 in was it 2992? And every ad is like the end of the world or mom and apple pie. So give me 2 minutes on what are you trying to do, and why is big tech take the best filmmakers in the world, and I either have a tear in my eye or I want to get under the desk because I'm afraid the Chinese are going to take me over if we pass Mike Davis's bill?
So it's S2992. My former boss, Chuck Grassley, is the champion of this bill in the Senate with Amy Klobuchar, and then Congressman Ken Buck, conservative all-star from Colorado, in the House, along with impeachment manager David Cicilline. This bill has wide bipartisan support with the progressive left and the Trump conservatives. And what it does is it finally breaks up big tech's gatekeeping power over information and commerce. So the trillion-dollar big tech monopolist, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, they have too much power. They're too influenced by China, and they use their power to crush competition, shutter small businesses, cancel conservatives and others with whom they disagree. They can't have this gatekeeping power. We've heard that, if you don't like Twitter, build your own. Well, guess what? Parler tried to do that. They had a $1.3 billion valuation. So what happened? They blamed Parler for the January 6th protest, even though they were organized on Facebook. Google and Apple kicked Parler out of the App Store duopoly, and Amazon kicked Parler off the internet. They crushed Parler. So there goes your build your own argument. We need to update and enforce our century-old antitrust laws and break up big tech's gatekeeping power.
Let me ask you some inside baseball. I'm hearing that you don't get a vote before recess, the August recess. It's over, but you're saying you think there's going to be a vote immediately. You don't believe that? You don't buy that? You say there's going to be a vote immediately upon their return before they leave for the campaign trail?
There's going to be all kinds of pressure on Schumer. Schumer knows that the votes are there. He had promised a vote to Klobuchar. He knows the votes are there. Klobuchar has delivered Democrat votes. Grassley has delivered the Republican votes. Schumer needs to call the votes. He needs to decide whether he wants to be with his populist base or his big tech billionaire donors. And he needs to call the vote. The closer we get to the midterm election, it makes it harder to pass this with bipartisan support, but it still can get done after Labor Day.
Mike Davis, how do people follow you on social media, and how they get to Article 3 and find out all the great work you're doing?
So I appreciate it, Steve. It's article3project.org, article number 3project.org, at article 3 project, at article number 3 project on Twitter and Getter. And my personal is MRDDMIA, at MRDDMIA. Thank you again.
Make sure everybody goes there and check it out. There's everything breaking, and now Mike's going to be on top of, because of his relationships, on top of this Hunter Biden. This is a massive story. I can't tell you how big this is going to be. Mike Davis, thank you. It's not just about the Bidens. It's about the corruption of the Chinese Communist Party, the influence peddling, the money, all of it. It's going to be massive, and why the FBI was not on top. Okay, let's play Joe Allen's. We got Mike Walsh and Joe Allen. Let's hit Joe Allen's cold open, and we'll get Joe Allen in.
So the potential for superintelligence kind of lies dormant in matter, much like the power of the atom lied dormant throughout human history, patiently waiting there until 1945. In this century, scientists may learn to awaken the power of artificial intelligence. And I think we might then see an intelligence explosion.
So let's do a thought experiment. Let's say that we decide to have a chat with China on some kind of treaty around AI surprises. In the 50s and 60s, we eventually worked out a world where there was a no surprise rule about nuclear tests, and then eventually they were banned. When somebody launches a missile, they, for testing or whatever, they notify everyone. And everyone then uses their missile defense systems to watch, to target, to train the systems. It's an example of a balance of trust or lack of trust. It's a no surprises rule. I'm very, very concerned that the U.S. view of China as corrupt or communist or whatever, and the Chinese view of America as failing, which has been well documented, will allow people to say, oh my God, they're up to something, and then begin some kind of conundrum, begin some kind of thing where because you're arming or you're getting ready, you then trigger the other side. We don't have anyone working on that, and yet AI is that powerful.
I think we need something like a Manhattan Project on the topic of artificial intelligence. Not to build it, because I think we'll inevitably do that, but to understand how to avoid an arms race and to build it in a way that is aligned with our interests. But the moment we admit that information processing is the source of intelligence, that some appropriate computational system is what the basis of intelligence is, and we admit that we will improve these systems continuously, and we admit that the horizon of cognition very likely far exceeds what we currently know, then we have to admit that we're in the process of building some sort of God. Now would be a good time to make sure it's a God we can live with. Thank you very much.
You think that science fiction is not, and that is this is the probably of everything we have to deal with on these shows. This underpins, I think it's the most important topic, and it underpins so much that's going on in the Great Reset and this authoritarian rule of the administrative state, all of it. The underpinning is that there's something there, what we call transhumanism. But one of the biggest aspects, remember, that's a convergence of many different kind of disciplines, 4 or 5 onto a point, what we call the singularity. One of the ones that's gotten a lot of attention here recently over the last couple of weeks is the artificial intelligence part. I want to bring in Joe Allen. Joe, tell me what I just saw, and how worried should I be when Schmidt essentially saying that, which they had the link on Drudge, artificial intelligence, and Miles Groh said this from the beginning. He said social media and artificial intelligence are more powerful, more lethal, and more deadly to the human race than nuclear weapons, sir.
Yes, Steve, the 3 men that we just heard for the listeners and radio audience, that was Nick Bostrom of Oxford University, Eric Schmidt, ex-Google, and of course, Sam Harris, one of the most prominent new atheism evangelists, talking about artificial intelligence becoming a new god. That sort of language is really not uncommon in certain tech circles, and it's pretty much universal among transhumanists. What you see there is a real concern by men who are pushing for the development of advanced artificial intelligence, including artificial general intelligence, talking about their worries. I think Nick Bostrom is probably the most articulate on this. His 2014 book, you can see here, Super Intelligence, really lays out all of the different possible pathways that an artificial superintelligence could develop. And what he talks about is the possibility of self-improving artificial intelligence software coming to a point of a hard takeoff. You would get then an intelligence explosion. And so his idea is that once an artificial intelligence system moves from artificial narrow intelligence, in which it just does simply one task, to artificial general intelligence, in which it's something like a human intelligence, to artificial superintelligence, it will be by its nature out of human control. And I think a lot of people, both laymen and experts in the tech industry, argue a lot about whether that's even possible or how likely it is. But you could say that about half, or whatever it is, about half, really do believe that the possibility of a hard takeoff, of an intelligence explosion, of an artificial intelligence system that would be, in essence, a god because it's superhuman, is not only possible but likely. And I think when you hear someone like Eric Schmidt, who was the chairman of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, in which he argued that we have to embrace artificial intelligence. We have to keep pushing for its advancement because we are, in essence, in an arms race with China. And if we don't develop it, and if we don't inculcate our Western values into those systems, then China will do so. And the artificial intelligence systems and all of the other technologies that are going to be controlled underneath that will be then wielded by China, or if it were to take off out of human control, it would be an artificial intelligence system that would bear the marks of communism and authoritarianism as opposed to consensus and liberty on the West. In all of these cases,
but when you say hang on, when you talk about that, that is at the general level, artificial general intelligence, and they're afraid of it. There are experiments going on. But let's go back. I want to go now back to what happened in Moscow, because we've been promised. These guys have sworn that this can't possibly happen. Go back to, in this instance, very important. The robot with the artificial intelligence playing against the young child or the young boy in the chess match and reached across when the boy kind of put his hand out there because there was a false move. The robot came and broke his finger. So how can any of their promises or any of the discussion they're having be taken seriously when you've seen really at a very small level that there's a problem here? I mean, why would a robot break a child's finger? At the same time, in the same couple of weeks, we've had this Google engineer saying, hey, I know when I'm talking to a human, and the program I was working on was a 7 or 8 year old child. Joe Allen.
Yeah, the situation in Moscow, I think, is really illustrative of the kinds of problems that all of these complex AI systems will probably inevitably show. And it shows the kind of inevitability of disaster. There should be no reason, really, for the mechanics of the system to be capable of breaking the kid's finger. So that obviously was a huge screw up. But just its behavior itself, which is controlled by the artificial intelligence systems, makes no sense. Why would it do that? And I think that whether or not the Russians have identified why it would do that or not, those unexpected consequences are the sorts of things we're going to see over and over again. And the more trust that people put in these systems to determine finances, to determine social structure and human decision making, and maybe most importantly, to determine the action on battlefields, the more trust people give these systems, and therefore the more power that they wield over the various systems that exist in our technological civilization, the bigger the disasters are bound to be.
Joe, we got to bounce, but one last thing. They fired the engineer that came forward back, I think it was on the 4th or 5th of June. They fired him a couple of days ago, and they reported, the buried lead in the article said they had done 11 internal not reviews, 11 internal investigations. Do you believe that Google should put forward all those investigations should be public immediately, sir?
Absolutely. I think that everything that's happening at Google, by and large, should be made public. I think the secrecy in these major corporations, from Google to Microsoft to Facebook to Amazon, what we know is horrifying enough. The more transparency, the better. And I look at the sort of legislation, the sort of antitrust legislation that's coming through, and whether or not that will lead to greater transparency, hopefully it will. It will certainly work towards pulling these guys down off their pedestal and making them accountable to us. And I think that's extremely important. So, yes, I think they should disclose everything that they know about that system. I don't really think that the system is necessarily conscious, but what you have there is the potential for an unpredictable system. And if those unpredictable systems are determining our lives, we need to know about it. And frankly, we need to put a stop to it.
What's your social media? How do people follow you, sir, and how do they get to all your great writings?
You can find actually a review up on Eric Schmidt's book, The Age of AI, right now at the top of my Getter or Twitter at JOEBOTXYZ. Also my website, joebot.xyz, and of course, warroom.org under the transhumanism tab. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks you, brother. By the way, today we've had Dave Walsh, the great energy expert. We've had Mike Davis, the great expert of everything dealing with the Supreme Court. We've had Rebekah Koffler, an expert on the KGB and Putin. We've had Joe Allen, our expert in transhumanism, and we're topping it off with Michael Walsh from Bombardier Books. It's going to be out shortly. I guess it's going to be out this fall, but every week I think they're putting up a new essay. Michael, join us here. This is unbelievable. You've taken on the Great Reset, and the way you did it, Walsh, was to go out and get 18 of the top thinkers in America and really go after it. Tell us what this book is about and what's the latest essay, sir.
Well, I'll explain it in one sentence, which is part of the book, which is the Great Reset, Steve, which some people think doesn't even exist or is a right-wing conspiracy theory. And yet the World Economic Forum, which is sponsoring it, is open about it, and they have videos about it on their website. So the Great Reset is a repackaging of totalitarianism in the service of a ruthless and insatiable elite who use new crises and fresh rhetoric to keep the citizenry pacified, divided, alienated, and grateful for their circumscribed standard of living. We are being herded, Steve, into high-rise apartments, eating bugs, owning nothing and being happy. All of these things are being sold to us as a positive good. And so what we decided to do in this book, with 18 essays against this Great Reset, against the New World Order, is to nail them from every angle that we could think of. And I was very, very proud and pleased that we got the kind of writers that we did. David Goldman, Conrad Black, Michael Anton, former national security advisor to President Trump, Angelo Codevilla, the late Angelo, this is his last essay, Richard Fernandez, Victor Davis Hanson, a whole lot of people. I contributed the introduction and the final essay myself. But I know this is a subject of great interest to you, Steve, and I'm grateful that we can have a chance to talk about it.
This book is going to be a massive book of the fall. Real quickly, how do they get to your site? You're putting up one essay a week. How do they get to find it right now, sir?
Yes, it's on. We have an essay up by James Polos of the Claremont Institute. It's up right now at the-pipeline.org. The pipeline.org.
The book is Against the Great Reset, 18 Theses Contrary to the New World Order. Michael Walsh is the editor. It's going to be a blockbuster, some of the top thinkers in the world. Michael Walsh, thank you for joining us here on War Room Battleground. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and we're going to be on fire. That I can promise you. See you then, 10 a.m. in the War Room.